Before we get into this episode, Mike and I want to thank you for being part of this community. We absolutely love what we do with this podcast, and we think it's important to bring you valuable content by exploring unconventional lifestyles, experiences, and perspectives. We are continually looking to improve the listening experience, and we want to bring in some of your favorite guests. We have a favor to ask, and that is if you can follow wherever you watch or listen so we can continue improving the show. We are so grateful for your support. Now let's get into it.
What's up, locals? It's Mike and Kenzie coming to you live from the 775. Story time for our listeners. We took a couple weeks off, partly because of me, mainly because of me, actually. It actually ties into my failing forward. So, in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there's Maureen Ponderosa.
Yes.
The bitch with the dead tooth.
Yes.
As Frank calls her. So I got this horrific scent that was coming from my mouth that you gave me shit about for months.
Yeah, I mean, it was horrific.
It was gross. And
it was like teetering on, downhill of a relationship.
Well, you didn't want to kiss me because it was like, you were literally telling me, like, please don't talk in my direction right now.
Yeah.
Like, angle your face away.
Yeah.
So finally I made a dentist appointment.
Thank God.
After 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 years ago, they told me, that was when I first got my tooth knocked out. They got everything reset. And they looked at my wisdom teeth and were like, you have plenty of space in your mouth. They should be good. You don't need to get those removed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was superior. I was holding myself a little bit higher. Like, I've got great genetics. I don't need to get my teeth taken out. Sucks to suck for other people. Well, all of them formed properly. All of them came out properly. But the gum line on one of them didn't recede.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had basically 1, 2, 3 molars, like wisdom teeth,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one didn't fully extrude. So I had gum growing over it, and it created this little pocket behind it where bacteria and infections could take place.
Right.
And so that stank that you're smelling is basically like bacteria and funk just getting vacuumed into the air from my mouth. So it's really fucking gross.
It smelled so bad. It
Yeah.
was so bad. And normally when you eat like a garlic meal or just something that's pungent,
Yeah, cilantro, garlic,
Yeah.
Mexican food in
you
general.
can normally tell, okay, they just ate something horrific.
I just had onions, yeah. I can
Right,
taste
yeah,
it
like
right
you can smell it in their bad breath, and then
Yeah.
you take a step back and you're like, okay, like they just need to brush their teeth.
Mhm.
You would brush your teeth and do mouthwash, and it still stank.
And I noticed it was far worse after specific things, like if I was really dehydrated,
Yeah.
if I got cotton mouth or anything like that, it was like that bacteria just proliferated
Right.
and was just I picture there's these I want to say they're Gia monsters, they're like giant Komodo dragon style lizards. And they have such a bacteria infested mouth that when they bite other animals, animals will go septic.
Mm.
And what they'll do is they'll follow them for days until that animal basically paralyzes in shock because they're septic in their body, and then the lizard will eat them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I, with the funk in my mouth, picture myself like that. Like, that's how I'm going to get my prey. So,
Yeah, that's gross.
it's really gross
don't
to
like
think
that.
about. But
But I'm glad you went to the dentist. You got your wisdom teeth out. That was a whole process of itself.
yeah.
Because getting your wisdom teeth out when you're younger, like I got my wisdom teeth out, I think when I was 20,
hmm
maybe when I was 19, actually. And I was really swollen, actually, compared to you. My whole cheeks were like, I looked like a chipmunk.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the recovery process being that crazy. But I think as you get older, it's a little bit harder to recover when you get your wisdom teeth out. Because even your dentist was like, you're in your last years to get them out before
Before it's too far gone.
Yeah.
Basically. Because I guess they solidify into your jaw and the roots go down even further. So it's far more painful.
Right.
And so they just don't do it with old people. Because also the older you get, I guess the more dangerous it is to get put under.
Mm.
But I didn't get put under. They shot me up with Novocaine and I got a little bit of nitrous and that was it.
And you were awake.
I was conscious. I was sober and awake. It was kind of distressing.
So you never went on, like, you never, like, passed out or
No,
anything like
I was
that?
communicating with them. They were telling me like if anything hurts, raise your hand because my mouth was so numb I couldn't talk. Like you remember when I got back and I was talking
Yeah.
like this?
Yeah.
Like you thought I was high and I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm coherent and I'm drooling because I can't feel like from
They
my
just
ears
numbed you
down.
up.
Yeah, I'm so numb that I could not feel my tongue. And so when I tried taking Tylenol and drinking water, I choked because I couldn't figure out how to swallow. Like I couldn't feel it. And so I spit blood and Tylenol everywhere.
So they put me under. I
Yeah.
totally remember them putting me under.
Yeah.
That's crazy that you were just fully awake for that. Were you expecting to go under, or did they tell you you're
Yeah.
not going under?
I was expecting to be high and I was expecting to go under, and I got neither. I was coherent. I could feel, like I was numb. I couldn't feel pain, but I could feel them physically removing the tooth. I could
Hmm.
feel them struggling to remove the bottom ones and having to drill, and I could still taste.
Interesting.
So I could taste blood, which was concerning and gross. And then the other part, they had to like drill these two bottom ones because I guess they were having a really hard time getting these out.
Hmm.
And so I could taste it's literally like heated dust bone or bone dust. Like it's such a specific, disgusting flavor.
Yeah.
And it was like making me nauseous. I was getting queasy initially when I used to talk about it like a week ago. Now
Yeah.
I'm much easier to talk about it. But I'm just so thankful that these are finally healing properly.
Yeah.
I can eat solid food. I'm not on like soups and protein shakes and
How
pudding.
long did that take?
The which part?
Like, just the whole thing?
The procedure?
Yeah.
So the top two literally came out like they took it felt like a mini crowbar and went, there's one. Oh, this one's having a harder time. Let's go from the other side. And then popped it out. There's two.
Yeah.
This one they had a hard time with, and they're like, okay, let's try the forceps. And they kept slipping,
Mm.
kept slipping. And so they got the drill, chipped away at it, and I think they like literally broke off the top of it so that they could get a better grip, and went in with forceps and actually like ripped it out. And I could feel them because at one point the dentist is like putting pressure on my jaw
Hmm.
so that it wouldn't like go with it. And my jaw was so fucking sore for like an entire week after.
But how long was it? 20 minutes? 30
The whole
minutes?
thing probably took 45. Sorry, I didn't realize I didn't answer your question. Um, they had to
Okay.
they had to make a cut by the gums. I think they actually removed like that overgrowth gum tissue
Yeah.
so that they could free this tooth and like chisel it out.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't put stitches in. Apparently, stitches that's like an older practice and it's not useful for getting your mouth healed up anymore
Hmm.
when you get certain types of wisdom teeth removal. If it's really like impacted into your jaw, that's a different story. But mine were literally like molars that were ready to work except for this back one. That was
Hmm.
creating all sorts of infection and stank.
Well, they also didn't put you on antibiotics. I just feel like you
No,
didn't have a normal
no,
procedure.
yeah, I don't want to get any more teeth taken out, period. But
Yeah.
here we are. So,
But make your appointments.
yeah, I have one. So, funny little silly story. I didn't want to forget when my next appointment was.
Hmm.
And 6 months from when I got it done, they were looking at August. We have a lot of stuff going on in August family, friends' birthdays, a little bit of travel. So, I was like, what's available in September? I was like, you know what I would remember as a date for September? 9/11. So my next appointment to get my teeth cleaned and everything is 9/11.
Perfect.
Yeah. I won't forget.
No,
Never forget.
yeah. No, it's going to be like 9/11 in your mouth.
It already was. What was your failing forward?
So, my failing forward, which I feel like I've dealt with my entire life, but I just don't think I have a good grasp of the English language.
Hmm.
I was at CrossFit and I had someone come up to me and was telling me, "Oh, I listened to your podcast." Like, um, one of the episodes that we were talking about how I maybe had a regret of quitting journalism as a major and moving into communication studies, and so he was like, "Do you really regret that? You know, like I don't think that you should regret it." And anyway, so we get into conversation about it. And I just lose all words and memory when I work out. I feel like you
That's
should.
totally normal too.
Yeah. Okay, that is normal.
Well, like when you exercise, oxygen has to go to all of the other parts that you're exercising, whether
Yeah.
that's if you're doing cardio, it's in your core, it's in your lungs,
Yeah.
it's your heart. when you're lifting heavy weights, it might be in your legs. Like the blood has to move to where you're using most of the blood, so
Right.
that way it can circulate. And so by the time that you're done working out, you're a little bit dumb and you're not going to immediately grab words. That's
No,
a
I'm
normal
always
thing.
dumb. People ask me like, "Oh, do you know this person?" I'm like, "Oh yeah," and I literally can't remember their name
Hmm.
if I'm trying to tell a story and I'm trying to put somebody's name. I it's a fever dream. That's what we call it. It's a fever dream. And so I'm talking with this person. I had just worked out. I'm literally sitting on the ground. I'm sweating. I'm like trying to get oxygen to my brain, and he's like, um, he's like, I really don't think you should have regretted it. And I was like, yeah, well, if I just stuck with it, I would have.
Stuck.
Yeah, if I just stuck with it, maybe I would, maybe I would have been somewhere else. And
Like you created a new
I
English word.
created, yes, and I could tell when I was looking at him, he was just staring at me like, did she just say stuck or was she trying to say stuck? And to me, I was just like,
Like STOOK.
yeah,
Stuck.
stuck.
I should have stuck
I
with it.
should have stuck with it. And I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, so
The way you're using it grammatically makes sense. And I feel like when you understand something, it's understood.
right.
If you stick with something, shouldn't it be stuck? Right?
Right. That's why I feel like it might be a word.
Well,
I feel like we
English
should.
is fucked up though. Like understand, they put un in front of it. Okay. Un is usually like a negating word. So
Right.
to understand something means you comprehend it. To durstand it means you do not understand. If you were to take the un out of that, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if you were to grammatically change the
So
word,
durstand means you don't understand.
yeah,
And then they just put
that's not a
on
word.
to mean durstand.
Like he's durstanding right now. Like if people don't know what I'm talking about, they're durstanding right now.
Right.
But if you know what I'm talking about, then they understand. That's how fucked up English is. We have these little like types of phonetic add-ons
Yeah.
that will dictate what that word means.
Interesting. Yeah. It's just so funny because I've had it my whole life. You know, I've had I've had trouble speaking words and even when I write, oh my gosh, this is another failing forward actually.
Okay.
Okay, so another failing forward, um we had our virtual team meeting. We haven't had a virtual team meeting in like months.
Mm-hmm.
Our manager quit, and
A
so
lot going on.
there's just a lot going on internally at my company right now. But we haven't had a manager, so we haven't had team meetings, and we finally have a team meeting where we're seeing everyone for the first time in like maybe 3 months, unless you've been side chatting with people. But anyway, so we get on this team meeting, and we all are like presenting. It's just like a collaborative team bonding moment. So each person like presents on whatever the subject was. And I always like to comment. Like I'm just in the comment section, just always being like, woohoo, like, good job, like, oh, I love this, or oh my gosh, like that's so cool. And anyway, I had said the wrong there.
Yeah.
Like there's which I know what
They're that way.
yes, like
They own it
yeah.
and
And
they
I
will be
know
doing
all the
something.
differences, but it's just when I'm typing so fast,
Yeah.
I rely on the autocorrect.
Mm.
And when it doesn't autocorrect me, because I'm just typing so fast and obviously I'm not being grammatically aware,
Mm-hmm.
and I put the wrong there and literally nobody responded. And I could
Really?
tell that everyone's like looking at what I said. I can't remember exactly the comment that I made, but you can tell when people, their eyes are looking at the camera and then they go to the chat because that's where it pops up is the bottom right corner
Mm-hmm.
and they're looking at it. And normally people will like respond to what you say. Nobody responded. It was crickets. And I was like,
So many people struggle with that one that it's forgivable. But
it
like
didn't feel forgivable in the moment.
you know what?
And wait, there was another word that I had said, but keep going with what you're
There's
saying.
there's something that bugs the shit out of me is pluralizing women and men when you're talking about a singular woman.
Yeah.
Like there are so many times that somebody has typed women and they're speaking of a singular woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it just bugs the shit out of me because grammatically it's changing it plural.
Yeah.
And it does not work. I understand if you fuck up a there situation, like that happens.
Yeah, but I need to be more aware about that. And I think it's just taking the time to slow down
Mhm.
and check what I'm writing, which I normally do. If I'm sending like emails or if I'm sending like a long text to somebody, like, I'll be able to
You got
be
autocorrect on your
detail
side.
oriented. And yeah, and I have I think it's called
Grammarly.
Grammarly
Yeah. That should
connected
be
on
an
my
ad.
computer. I know, gosh, Grammarly. A shameless plug, but yeah, I feel like I feel like other people that are learning the English language probably know more than I do about how to speak it grammatically, correct?
English is a hard language to learn for
I don't we
non-English
yeah,
speakers. For spelling, I feel like here's the thing with spelling though. If I understand what you're trying to say, that's fine. If I understand what you're trying to say, I have an issue with it. Okay? Like the spelling, yes, it's important
yeah,
professionally, but if you're writing a message and I can translate and like, you know, decode what you're trying to communicate,
yeah,
okay, you've got the message across.
yeah.
So,
But I used to be really embarrassed about saying the wrong word, and
mhm.
I just feel like I just need to say it. And and then I just can correct myself. I'll be like, is that even a word with what I just said? Because it's been so, like, my whole life I've been like this.
Mhm.
And I have other, family members in my life who have also had this
I think that
issue.
might be where you get it
And
from.
so I think that influence has definitely impacted the way that I speak. But overall, I think I just need to own it and I'll just be like, yeah, I said the word wrong. Like,
I feel
whatever.
like doing that socially is actually very admirable. People are usually afraid to be wrong.
Admirable.
Admirable. Am I saying that incorrectly?
No, I'm
Is it?
just saying it's admirable to own up to saying a word wrong.
No, it's admirable to take risks using words that you're not 100% certain on. Like some people will totally avoid a word because
Yeah.
they don't know it, and then they'll try and find something else and it's not the best word in a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're taking a risk, it feels like a little bit of a social risk. You're opening yourself up to like looking like you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's uncomfortable, but I do think that's admirable.
Well, I love learning new words. And clearly, I love taking risks with them too because you'll teach me a word and then it will be like, and it's not even that you're teaching me, it's just the way that you speak.
Hmm.
And you'll say a word and I'll be like, oh, okay. And it's just subconsciously in my head. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to play around with it. And it becomes my word of the month. And
That's
sometimes I
true.
say it wrong or sometimes I use it in the right way. And then sometimes I use it in the wrong way. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I'll pipe up when it's used incorrectly, but you'll play around with it and then you get the gist when I stop bothering you about it. You're like, "Okay, I'm using this right."
Yeah.
There's one word that sticks out to me that is so commonly misused because it's not real, but a lot of people think it's real is irregardless. They add an IR to regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless already negates what you're talking about. Without regard, regardless.
Right.
You add ear in front of that. That's another un. Ear
Yeah.
and un are virtually the same. So irregardless of that word, it's a fucked up word. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I want to go back a little bit to my experience, and we can kind of shift into the first topic with it. But getting my wisdom teeth out and a little bit of nitrous, a little bit of Novocaine, talking about medical drug experiences versus recreational. Why are recreational drug experiences taboo to talk about? Like, in your opinion,
I think it's because there's responsible versus irresponsible,
irregardless.
irregardless. I think that when you're using it recreationally, people
Hmm.
can just look at that as irresponsible, reckless, risky behavior.
Hmm.
And so it's not as accepted,
Hmm.
I think, with people. Whereas when you're using it for medical use, it's prescribed. And people can look at that as, oh, you're taking this because you have to get better, like to improve whatever ailment is going on with you.
Okay,
I'm
so
just saying from the surface level
right,
of
right.
how that would look.
So I can understand that. So in my little anecdote about getting my wisdom teeth taken out, I made a comment that I wasn't high and I was upset about it. And that's totally socially acceptable to be like, I went to the dentist, they didn't put me under, they took teeth out. I wanted them to make me high as balls so I would not have to think about it.
Right.
That's okay to talk about. But if I'm telling my boss, oh, how was your weekend? And it's like, well, I got high as balls on Saturday. That is totally not okay to talk about.
Right.
Take a sick day, go to the dentist, totally fine. Recreational Saturday, not okay at all.
Well, I mean, would you tell your boss like that you got super drunk on Saturday and blacked out? because
Probably
drinking
say I'd
is,
had a
but
few
that's
drinks.
right. But that's what I'm saying.
I would
It's
be
not
vague
just
about it.
recreation. It's not just like drug use. I think it's just the misuse of drugs. Like when you
The
go,
abuse, if you will.
yeah, the abuse of it.
Or misuse, because it's not always abuse too. It's a good, I like that word better.
Thank
Misuse.
you. Okay. I was like, I feel like I didn't say that wrong.
No, you said it correct. Misuse is like you're playing around with drugs. Abuse is
Yeah.
like I'm an addict.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I think where even, it's funny when you come back from the weekend and let's just say people were out, you saw them on social media. It
Mm-hmm.
was their birthday. They had, maybe a few two espresso martinis and they come back and it's like,
They look haggard.
yeah, they look haggard, they look hungover. You're like, "Oh, you went hard." And like
Mm-hmm.
for me, I'm so honest, with people. I'm just like, "Oh yeah, like I had a great time, like I got drunk, whatever." But then some people are like, "Oh yeah, like I just had a quiet night in, had a few drinks."
They
While
play it down.
secretly, yeah, they play it
Yeah.
down. And I think it comes with how you want to be portrayed, like whether you're looked at as irresponsible, immature, misusing,
Mm-hmm.
all of that kind of stuff. I think it comes down to that.
So the reason that I'm asking about like medical versus recreational is that there are certain drugs that fall under both categories,
Hmm.
and Xanax is a great example. Some people take Xanax for anxiety. Other people take Xanax to get high.
Okay.
Same drug, same effect, different purposes behind it, spoken about differently. But you can talk about, oh, I have anxiety medication that helps me with getting on a flight. But you can't say, on Saturday, I got barred out, dude. That's not okay. That's a different thing. You are talking about the exact same drug, the exact same experience, but because it's used recreationally, you can't talk about that in the same way. Now, there's a limit.
Because I think it's the prescription aspect of it.
Okay.
I think that when people normally are like, oh, yeah, I got barred out this weekend, they probably took more than the prescribed amount to
Right.
escape and to be fucked up,
Fair.
to go onto the verge of blacking out or whatever happened, versus if you're using it to go on a plane, you know, people are not getting blacked out on the plane and getting barred out on the plane where they can't even
Well,
walk
they're a
off.
zombie.
Yeah, where they're a zombie.
Yeah.
Like, I think again, it comes down to the prescription where it's used for a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Okay.
think, yeah, like,
Do you
it's a
think
prescribed amount. And then even people that get prescriptions, they
still
go
they
overboard with the
still misuse it
prescription.
from
Yeah,
time
they
to time?
misuse it. It's going over the prescribed amount.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a very human trait. For some reason, people seem to go, this feels good. I wonder what a little extra feels like. That's what alcohol is, right? You have one, you're like,
Oh,
this
I'm
tastes
feeling
like,
good.
well, it starts with, this tastes like shit. This is poison.
Yeah.
And then after it sets with you for a little bit, you're like, I wonder what one more would feel like.
Yeah.
And then you have one more, and
Right.
you're like, oh, this is the effect.
Yeah.
This is what the desired outcome is. That's what drugs are.
Yeah.
Right? And people want to pretend like they're all high and mighty and better than that. No, if you, let's say you got your knee worked on, maybe you had an ACL that got blown out,
Hmm.
and they give you a couple perks, and you take one, and one makes you a little numb,
Yeah.
but two makes you just on a cloud.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I can relax. I can watch Desperate Housewives.
Right.
Like, oh, you're not hurting anybody. You're adding a little extra. And even the doctor will say, like, if you need a little bit more, this is a safe dose for you to take. Like, that's okay. I
Yeah.
feel like recreationally, those conversations shouldn't be so taboo because people can also learn from those experiences. Maybe somebody took too much
Yeah.
and they did take too much Xanax on a flight and they were a zombie and had to be escorted off the plane when they landed.
Yeah.
Like those are learning points.
Right.
You can share that information, people can see the potholes ahead and go, "Oh, I should avoid that." The problem that I see actually poking a little bit of logistical holes in that argument,
Yeah.
making things sound too fun
Right.
and encouraging others to do basically misusing drugs.
Yeah.
But I also take the stance that, you're an adult, do what you want with your body just as long as you don't harm others or, fuck up the lives of your children and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the legal decriminalizations in places like Austin for marijuana,
Mm-hmm.
there's total decriminalization on almost all drugs, including all hard stuff in Portland. You have places like San Francisco and Philadelphia. They have harm reduction sites. Same with Seattle.
What are the specific drugs that you're talking about?
In which areas? So Austin has marijuana decriminalized.
Okay.
Portland has everything decriminalized. You could be walking around with heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, doesn't matter. You could use those substances as long as you're not selling them.
Mm-hmm.
That's their hard line is doesn't matter where you get them from. You can have them on you for personal consumption,
Right.
but you can't use them. There are definitely some aspects of like I think that's good legally. Adults have the right to do what they want with their body. The open air drug markets is a huge issue in San Francisco and Philadelphia. You see that going on, so
Mm-hmm.
that's not good.
Right.
But there are other drugs, and part of this decriminalization that's positive is that it's actually bringing benefit and legalization to people who need it. Um, Mainly pure MDMA, ketamine, and psilocybin. So for those who don't know, MDMA is street drug Molly. They use it for not World War II vets. They use it for combat veterans.
Woo!
I remember the Nazis. I was taking them out. No, for combat vets, they get either MDMA or ketamine treatment, and it's supposed to help with anxiety, PTSD, suicidal thoughts. A lot of people, some of our friends, are actually doing ketamine treatment for depression,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a legal psychedelic experience where they go into a monitored doctor's office and they trip balls for an hour, and they come out and they go, "I'm still depressed, but I'm gonna be okay."
Yeah.
And then with psilocybin, it's something very similar. They're kind of working with end of life patients on that one.
Yeah.
I think that's up in Oregon and Washington, but they're bringing it into California. And I think other states are going to follow. Colorado might be another. I think that's all inherently positive because it's going to be utilizing well researched, easy to manufacture drugs that much of the population's already been exposed to and is aware of,
Mm-hmm.
but changing the stigma from this illegal, whether it's a party drug or whatever it is, but putting it in a medical setting
Yeah.
where you have people who have recreational experiences that were inherently positive, that they're not trying to push onto somebody so that they have like this blast of a time. It's like, no, this helped me with my depression
Yeah.
or my anxiety. That's where I see that going. That's why I support that.
Yeah. No, I definitely support that as well. I think going back to your question on why is it taboo to talk about it recreationally versus medical use,
Mm-hmm.
I think we are seeing more of the drugs that would be used recreationally in a medical use.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
In a facility, basically, or like a,
in a
a
medical,
situation.
yeah, in a medical use like practice.
Yeah.
So I think again, it does come back to the misuse of it and going over like what would be a prescribed amount because I definitely think if you are using some of those drugs and you're going overboard, it can totally damage
Yeah.
your mental sanity.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
so I do think that that's why it's taboo is because you obviously don't want to encourage people to go over the amount.
mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously what people do when partying,
Looks
you know,
different than in a
it
medical
looks,
setting.
yeah, it looks different than a medical setting, but I think, we see more, um, I mean, I think the percentage of people who are dying in a party recreational setting with some of these drugs,
Significantly higher.
yeah, it's significantly higher than people that are doing it in like a room with a doctor.
But the benefit that I see to legalization for most drugs like that and pushing it forward
Mm-hmm.
is that you can get 100% pure pharmaceutically manufactured drugs that takes away a black market. When you take away a black market, that's going to undercut crime. That's going to lower illegal activities. People are going to stop ODing on fentanyl. Their drugs aren't going to be street drugs that are getting stepped on with other things that kill people.
Yeah,
And that is far more positive. Like,
totally.
I think that that is the direction I want to see just our country go when it comes to medical and recreational use,
Yeah.
because it's probably going to help limit a lot of the social ailments that come with it. Because this other stuff with like fentanyl is really scary.
Well,
Like
yeah, the
it's
thing that just happened in South Lake where
yeah
4 people died,
yeah, and that's totally
and
avoidable.
I mean, yeah, it's really it is really scary what's happening out on the streets and what people are don't know what they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think the more that we can have more doctors like have
We need medical grade cocaine.
well, no, I don't think we need medical grade cocaine. I'm just saying
It
that
already exists. It's been around for so long. That was early dentistry. That's
Yeah.
what Novocaine is related to.
Yeah, but you can't go to the doctor and say, like,
Yes, you can.
you can say that I want medical grade Coke.
If you are wealthy enough and you live in Hollywood, yes, you can. You can say, I have an allergy to Novocaine. And in fact, I will pay you happily extra to get liquid medicinal cocaine. That is a real thing.
Wow. I did not know that.
It's a topical numbing agent. See, just because you're poor, you can't get access to those drugs. But if you have enough money, it's totally fine. All right, moving on, shall we?
So, getting into our next topic, we wanted to talk about friendships because we've noticed as we have, gotten into our late 20s and have moved around a couple different places, it's really hard to make friends as you adult.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that?
It's like dating.
It is like dating.
Like, you see certain red flags in people that, 5 years ago you would have been stoked on.
Right.
Oh, this person loves to party. Like, they're so much fun to go out with and drink
Yeah.
a lot and dance and, like, just get riggedy wrecked. Like, 5 years ago, that would have been a blast. And now it's,
Right.
like, teetering on alcoholism. You're like, hey, man, you didn't get that out of your system
Yeah.
during then? Like, is everything okay?
Right.
And I think in the past, we've also been, like, the bad influence friends that are like,
Mm-hmm.
let's go bar hopping, let's keep it going.
Yeah.
And some of our other friends are, like, kind of reeling it in and calming down and like, I'd rather just have a couple beers and have a good time,
Yeah.
not feel terrible and lose tomorrow.
Yeah. We just like to dance. We just like to, I don't
Like to
know.
party.
We like to party. We like to have a good time. But
Mhm.
I think as we've gotten older, the priorities have shifted and
It's also like a been there, done that type.
yeah.
Like it's lost some of the flair and the zest.
Yeah.
Like I'd
It's
rather
not new.
I'd rather go have a couple cocktails and go enjoy music and dance rather
Right.
than like get smashed because that
Right.
feels terrible the next day.
Yeah. There's been countless of times. I don't even have enough fingers or toes to count how many times I have been hungover throwing up. And I am just so sick of it.
Mhm.
I'm over not feeling good. And anyway, I mean, I don't know why we always go back to drinking.
It always goes back to
it always
drinking
goes
and
back
we're
to
not
drinking.
doing it again.
Yeah. But going back to just the friendships, I think like priorities have changed. And I think for me, like when I was younger, I think about friendships like literally starting from out of the womb, right?
Yeah.
When you're like even before preschool, getting into preschool, I thought about like my mom was part of so many mom groups and
Mommy
play
and me
groups. Yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
And so I had a lot of forced friendships, I would say. Not in a negative way, just forced friendships because like
By proximity.
yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
your kid is in the same class as my kid.
Right.
My kid is looking for friends. How about we have a play date?
Yeah.
And like, let's go hang out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say that I'm friends with none of those people now.
Mm-hmm.
Except for one who she's my best friend. And
Funny how that works.
yeah, it's funny. It's
Yeah.
funny how that works. But like that was literally, out of the womb, we were meant to be friends. On paper, I don't think that we would have been friends, but
Right.
because of it's just family now, like,
I think it's more than that, though. I think you guys balance each other in such a way that because you are so different,
yeah,
like you've taken different life paths, but you have the same core values.
yeah,
You love each other like family,
right.
and you have different perspective that you can share with one another, and it's like a completely new idea.
Yeah, and it's also like now because we've known each other our whole lives, there's nothing to explain. She
Mhm.
knows my family, I know her family.
That's true.
There's nothing where I have to go back in time and like relay, okay, well, this is what happened when I was 13 years old, and
Here's
this
the
is why I have
context.
trauma, and like this is, whatever it is. They just know because they lived through it with you, which is such a special thing to have in your life. Like not everyone has that.
Mhm.
And I feel very thankful to have her in my life. But anyway, I just think about, okay, that was, when I was super young. And then as you get into elementary school, you're making friends on your own. And then, I just assume that your parents see like, oh, they're playing with this kid a lot more. And so then you become friends with them.
Mhm.
But it's like immature friendships. It's very immature friendships in like
Yeah.
elementary and middle school.
Well, you get to also go through life and you're learning certain social boundaries.
Right.
Like you're probably socialized by the time you're around 4, realistically, of what's okay and what's not okay
Mhm.
as like a human being of right and wrong.
Yeah.
But then when you go into new social interactions as a child and then as a preteen, holy shit, like between all of the different changes that happen in your body,
Yeah.
like testosterone and estrogen, and you start going into like maturity a little bit.
Yeah.
And girls are maturing faster than boys. Like
Mm-hmm.
friendships dramatically change.
Dramatically change. Middle school friendships were fucking brutal for me.
Yeah, I think
Brutal.
they like sharpen you into a character or they traumatize you. One of the
Yeah.
two.
And it's crazy because I can now look back after healing from the trauma that I felt like I went through in middle school. I can now look back and be like, oh my gosh, like, you just want to hug all the girls that,
Mhm.
you were friends with and maybe you got into fights with, or maybe someone that was being mean to you, because you're like, you can look at it now from a perspective that they were going through a lot.
Yeah,
And I have a lot more forgiveness, and I have a lot more um
that's a mature perspective.
yeah, well,
That's what
yeah,
time
as you get,
does.
yeah, that's what time does as you get like older. But when you're in that mindset, that's all you can think about. And you're like, how could they hurt my feelings? How could they say that? I thought we were friends.
Hmm.
And your idea of what a friend is, I think it's just so different. It just evolves and it changes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have changed multiple times in different phases of life, and my friendships around me have changed too.
Right.
Like I know that there's actually a handful of things that I continue to look for and value in friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is loyalty all the way. Like some of my best friends were loyal to the soil. Like they'll call me out on my bullshit. They always have my back.
Yeah.
Like if anything went horrifically wrong, I've got at least two couches to stay on,
Mm-hmm.
maybe three.
Yeah.
And I can't live there forever, obviously. And it's mutual. Like
Right.
that's reciprocated. It's nothing but love. And
Yeah. Well, you
those
guys push each other of like, okay, it's time.
yeah,
Let's move on.
yeah,
Let's
it's like, hey,
grow.
get better.
Yeah.
But there's also this level of like I don't know whether it's to call it support, but it's loyalty. Like there's just something there. And I might not see them or talk to them for could be weeks, sometimes it's months. There
Mm-hmm.
are certain friendships that I have that I may not see for years,
Yeah.
but we get back with one another and it's like nothing changed. We're still homies. And like we might have to update each other on a few things, but
Right.
that other aspect doesn't change.
Yeah.
So,
But the dynamic between you guys hasn't necessarily changed, or has
no.
it?
I would say it has in some ways because I tend to go from like being the rowdy one. I seek my closest friendships. I seek the quieter, more reserved individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm usually the one that's trying to bring something out of them. And as life has gone on, I am more selective with that. I'm not necessarily trying to be the star of the show or the center of attention as I was when I was like 13 or when I was 18.
Yeah.
Like that has changed. I don't need to
Yeah.
be front and center anymore.
Yeah. I definitely think for me, especially like in middle school and high school, I I definitely think I'm outgoing still now, but I was like really outgoing.
Hmm.
Like I was always saying, I was always saying stuff before I thought it.
Right?
Maybe didn't have a filter at times. And I think that definitely like attracted some people, but it also, I think, pissed off a lot of my a lot of people that I was friends with too.
Totally.
Um, but it's interesting how different friendships like bring different sides of you out. Like for some reason, I did feel like I attracted people that were more quiet, but I didn't seek that out. I think it was just more it balanced me out, and that's why we got along so well.
That's how I was, I would say.
Yeah. As you go through middle school and high school, I feel like I never thought that I could make new friends as much. I felt like I was kind of stuck with the friends that I made in middle school, and I had to be friends with them throughout high school.
Hmm. Really? Seriously? No, seriously?
Yeah.
You felt stuck with
Like
those people?
yeah, no, I felt stuck. I felt like and not to I don't want to say that I didn't want to be friends with the friends with that that I was friends with. I had really close like best friends in middle school and high school.
Hmm.
But I think there was definitely people that I was attracted to being friends in high school, but I always felt so scared to go make new friends because my current friends, I always felt like they would judge me for trying to go hang out with other people and trying to get to know other people.
Like the
And if
mixing of
you're
friend groups doesn't work type of
yeah,
thing?
and
Yeah.
there were groups. Like at my
Yeah.
high school, it was very specific groups. Everyone hung out with those groups. And,
Super
I'm a
clicky.
social butterfly. I really did want to be friends with like everyone. And sometimes, you know, when your group, when your group of friends are being mean to you, and you feel like you have nowhere else to go,
Hmm.
you want to go make new friends. And so I felt like I really started putting myself out like in my classes where I didn't have my group of friends in there, and I started developing friendships outside of my group that way.
Hmm.
Um, but after high school, I feel like I definitely cut off a lot of friendships that just weren't serving me anymore.
That's healthy. That's
Yeah,
normal. Yeah.
which is healthy, but I think at the time it felt like maybe I was running away from conflict. Like instead of addressing with the friends that I felt hurt by and being like, "Hey, like you hurt my feelings, like this isn't okay." I just would rather cut you off, not talk to you and move on
It would
to
be
new
easier
friends. It'd
to
be
do that.
easier, and
Yeah.
that's what I did. You know, not
Sometimes that's better though, especially at that age when
yeah.
everybody's still trying to figure themselves out.
Mhm.
That's still happening with us right now. Like people are still trying to figure themselves out.
Yeah.
But it's okay to cut your losses and run, especially at that age group. Like I don't know, I had a pretty pivotal moment in high school when I was 16 where me and my best friend looked at the friend group that we were with. And this is like right after my girlfriend and I broke up, and it was like, "Oh my god, this is my friend group." And
Mhm.
now most of them are her friends. Like, fuck. Like, I have my buddies. I don't really like these people. And so, me and my friend, best friend, like, looked at each other and we're like, the path that these people are on, if we stick around with them, we're going to be fucking losers. Like, we're going
Mhm.
to be stuck here forever. So, we made the choice to, like, stop sitting with them at lunch, stop socializing with them on the weekends. Like, we had to go make other friends.
Yeah.
And that made me invest so much more into rugby. That made me invest so much more into my other relationships with people
Right.
that suddenly I gained like more lifelong friends because of it. And that came from looking around, identifying like who am I friends with? Is this going to be serving my trajectory? Holy shit, it's not. We got to bail.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that my homie came with me
Yeah.
because he was, you know, he wasn't liking it from the beginning. He was kind of there because I was there.
Yeah, and I think it's cool to see your friendships, like your loyal friendships evolve as well
Hmm.
because you evolve as people. I
Totally.
think like even in a relationship, it's like when you're in it from the long haul, like who we were at 19 is definitely not who we are today, and it's
No.
the same thing with friends.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why some friendships like don't work out because your priorities are not the same. What you like is not the same. And if that does get in the way of you guys having a friendship because that's all you guys bonded over
Hmm.
at that time, then they can dissipate. Something that happened to me with one of my really close friends that I had known since preschool. She was like the second longest friend that I had had at the time. We went to the same college, and freshman year we were not roommates, but like we were close. We would get coffee dates together, lunch dates, like go hang out to the movies. Like we had our remaining friendship.
Hmm.
But we both had different friends, like different friend groups freshman year of college. And then we decided to live together our sophomore and junior year of college. And I realized that you cannot always live with your friends. And
Hmm.
like I truly experienced the whole, you know, don't live with your best friend in college because it could ruin your friendship. Like that happened to me.
Hmm.
And I never thought that it would because it's like I had known her for so long and we remained, you know, really good friends throughout all the different phases of life that we went through.
Up until
But
that
up
point.
until that point, but we had never gone to school together. Like we never went to the same besides preschool, but we never went to the same elementary, middle, or high school. We did outside activities together, like
Hmm.
we did theater together, but we never went to school together where you're surrounded by those people
And you're
for
with
six
them.
plus hours a day.
Not just that, but then you live with them. So you
Yeah,
get to
and
see
then
a
you
different
live with
side.
them. Exactly. So I didn't know all the sides to her that I thought I knew. I called her my best friend and clearly I did not know her
Hmm.
that well because once we moved in together, we did not we did not get along, which
Hmm.
is it's just really unfortunate the way that everything panned out, but sometimes it's just like okay, it is the way that it is and
Well, I think life also happens too, where
yeah,
you guys are kind of destined to go in different directions,
right.
and that relationship, the value of it changes,
Yeah,
especially when it gets damaged. And sometimes that damage is like ego gets in the way. You're not interested in apologizing. You're
right.
not interested in trying to like maintain or bring that relationship back to
Yeah.
healthy. And so you intentionally kind of let it, drop off and die.
Right.
You're like, well, we're different people now. Like,
Yeah.
maybe one day, or maybe not.
Yeah. And it just is what it is at this point. But it's just interesting to see how that all panned out for me, and not being friends with her at all.
That's pretty crazy, but that's also pretty normal.
Yeah.
I want to know, when it comes to like favorite types of friendships, what you look for and
Yeah.
what you gain from different types of friendships, like deep versus shallow. You guys have common interests.
Shallow.
There are shallow friendships. I have
Yeah.
shallow friendships where I barely know this person, but I enjoy their company.
Yeah.
I have fun with them. I just don't know them very well. I have a lot of those.
So would you call it more surface? Because when I think of shallow, I think of
Yeah, surface
like
and shallow. I'm using those
negative.
interchangeably, but yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Shallow does sound negative. Surface level friendships
Yeah.
that I'm not like, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets and what are your traumas. It's more like, let's have beer and have a good time.
Everybody's looking for a deeper connection. But what I didn't realize is that not every friendship has to have a deep connection to it.
Mm-hmm.
That there are different levels of friendship. I didn't realize that until, I would say, in like the last couple years. I have put so much weight on my friendships, which is why I think it's been hard for me to find friends and like retain those friends, because I look at myself as someone, I'm a very active listener. I feel very present with my friends. Like I want to know your deepest, darkest secrets. I want to know, like, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
I love, like, I just love being there for people. That's how I just kind of share my love in that way. And I feel connected when people feel so comfortable to share that with me.
You also love that being reciprocated.
And I love reciprocation. But what I realized is I don't always open up to my friends. I'm always expecting them to open up to me,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not always opening up to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, in order to get to that deeper level that you want, like, you have to be vulnerable. You have to share what's going on. And sometimes even when it's not asked,
Yeah.
because maybe some people don't know how to ask those questions. And I think I've just always, I grew up with parents that were very interested in my life, always asking me questions, and we would talk at length about every decision I've ever made in my life, good or bad, going through the motions of it. And so I think that's just my expectation. I think also in friendships, which is a interesting thought that I had of, like, does your relationship with your parents reflect how you have friendship with people? But anyway, we can get to that.
I want to answer that question.
Okay.
Because I think the answer is no.
Okay.
Reason being, there are certain friends that I have that I believe I know very well,
Mm-hmm.
and I ask them continuously questions. There are other friendships that I have where I feel like I should know them better, but I don't ask as many questions as I should. And I think that it's very normal for somebody to get used to like a character of you in their head.
Yeah.
They've seen you express your views a handful of times over a number of years. They get to know this character that they create of you in their head. And that's stagnant.
Yeah.
And they don't assume there's going to be much evolution. They have an idea of how you think, how you're going to respond. Like, in their head, that's what Kenzie is. When Kenzie in the real world changes and develops and evolves as a person,
Yeah.
and your views change,
Right.
that's in conflict.
My behavior changes.
Your behavior changes, and when that's in conflict. I'm fucking up my words today. But when that's in conflict with what they expect of you,
Yeah.
people get little troubled by it. They ask, like, is our friendship okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or they're just kind of like assuming something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, it's like, no, I'm growing and changing and developing. And the character that you have in your head of me does not match the one that you're interacting with right now.
Yeah. I also, just to like go off of that, or like to add, because I do want to dive deeper into what you just said, but I want to add also what you're portraying versus how you actually feel inside can be completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on the friendship that you have with the person too. I have like a quick story, but It was probably like 6 years ago, maybe. Um, I had in my Instagram bio something about like the ocean is deep, so don't drown, or something like that.
Mm.
I don't. Do you remember when I had that on my Instagram bio?
I'm trying to think of the exact wording. It was something about
It
it
was.
was
It was something like
it
that. It
was a
wasn't.
metaphor of you being deep and try not to drown in me or something
Yes.
like that. It
Yes.
was a little
Something.
cheesy.
Something stupid, and I. But
I
you know
contributed to
me.
that. I'm sorry.
And me being, I felt like, and I really did feel like a deep person because I feel like I've always been very self-aware
Hmm.
of my own feelings. Like I've always been aware of like, intentional of other people's feelings. Um, but I think so anyway, so going back to the story, I had someone ask me what that meant and they were like, what does that mean?
Hmm.
And I was like, well, I'm a deep person. Like I'm just
Sounds like a
saying.
really shallow thing to say when you
Right,
say it like
right.
that.
Like yeah, and I'm like, well, I'm a deep person, and they laughed and were like, I do not get that from you.
Hmm.
Like
Was that offensive?
I don't see. Oh my gosh, it crushed me.
Really?
I was so hurt by that because I think, and not that I was like priding myself on being a deep
A
person,
little bit. A little bit.
but it was part of like my identity.
So you did pride
Of okay,
yourself on
yeah, okay, whatever, yeah,
it.
I was priding
It
myself on it.
offended you. It was part of your
Yeah, it
identity.
totally. Yeah,
In your bio. Yeah,
yeah.
it
Okay.
was.
Okay. Totally. Okay. Yeah, you're totally right. Uh, but I was so hurt by that, and I was just like, wow, like you don't think of me that way, but that's how I totally see myself. And so it's like, what am I giving off?
Hmm.
And then I realized, well, that person doesn't know everything about me,
Hmm. You
and
don't share all sides of you.
exactly. I don't share every single thing with that person.
Yeah.
So, of course, they probably don't think I'm deep because I'm not getting deep with them.
Yeah.
And that was something that I had to, think about over years. Like, it literally took me years. That comment had bothered me for so long. And it took me years to get to the point where I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be like, I don't have to get hurt by that because
It's not that deep.
it's not that deep. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
And so it was just interesting because I've always thought like, how am I coming off to other people? Because the way that other people see me sometimes is not how I always see myself. So it's just an interesting thought to have when going through life, when you're interacting with people of how how are you trying to portray yourself and is that really you?
Hmm.
And I already have an answer to that. It is you.
Hmm.
It's just one side of you. And that's okay.
If you're a multi-dimensional person, like you're multifaceted, you have different angles and different beliefs and different styles of you,
Yeah.
then yes, you're going to project different versions of you to different people, especially at different times.
Right.
Because some of my closest friends, I have seen different sides come out of
Mhm.
during moments of chaos or excitement or
Right.
happiness or anger.
Yeah.
Like there are people that you think you know, and then you see anger come out, and you're like, holy shit, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, I have never witnessed that in our entire friendship.
Yeah.
That's a different person,
Right.
but that is also your friend.
Right.
And they don't show that side, usually because you're not on the receiving end.
Mhm.
But I think there are some, I don't want to call them one dimensional people, but there are two-dimensional people that are like, this is me all the time.
Mhm.
And it's very difficult for them to get a little hiccup in that flat line.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time hanging out with those people.
Yeah. Um but then other people might see you that way. And they
And I think
might
they
see
do.
yeah, and I think like
Yeah.
that's I it,
Well, I got to take this and run with it for a second because I know that it comes down to how comfortable am I with you
yeah.
as a person. There are people that I don't know very well that for some reason, I know they don't know a lot of the other people in my life, and I can be totally free.
Mhm.
I can be myself to every angle, and they will actually get to enjoy me for me.
Mhm.
They get to see the good, they get to see the bad, and a lot of the awkward and the
Mhm.
weird, and they accept me for that.
Yeah.
And so, for being around those people, I can be like a much freer version of myself
Yeah.
when I'm worried about how I'm perceived by certain people. And this was the longest time with your parents when I first met them. I was Mr. Button Up, clean, polished.
I would say with my whole family, you were
Yeah,
like
I was
that.
kind of a corporate dildo is how I
Yeah.
was acting. And there
And
was
that
a
is like so what like
that's not
you
me.
hate that.
That is like the bane of my existence,
Right.
and I do that when I get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I know why. For the longest time I didn't understand it, and you would ask me like, "Why do you do that? Just be yourself."
Right.
And it's a version of myself, but it's a defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to signal I pose no threat, like I'm good for your daughter or your
Well,
sister or
it's like me.
whoever.
Like
It's
you
it's
want people
being
to like you.
agreeable. Yeah, you want to
That
be liked.
right.
You want to not ruffle any feathers. And it's recently come to my attention something that I've already known, but it's kind of come to the forefront of my thoughts is being pleasant and mild as a person does not make history. It doesn't make waves.
Mm-hmm.
To be pleasant and mild is enjoyable, but they are that flatline character.
Yeah. You got to have a little spice to life.
You gotta
And
add a
even
little
when you
zest.
see like reality TV shows and you see the different personalities that are like
That's
a
why they're
little
entertaining.
spicy. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why they're entertaining. That's why they make great TV. But I think also in person, like if you're just, yeah, if it, I think it just also depends because sometimes we have certain friends where it's just like a good hang. It's
Oh
always going
yeah.
to be good vibes, a good hang, and sometimes you just need those friends. Like your friends are certain friends are in your life for a certain period of time, or maybe they're in a certain season,
Hmm.
or I guess that means the same thing. But
Season, a period of
yeah,
time. I quantify them differently.
yeah, but I think that going back to what I was trying to say about like different levels of friendship,
Hmm.
not every friendship has to be deep.
Right.
And I think I would get very insecure when my friendships weren't like that and I would not necessarily consider them friends if they weren't deep. And
Mm.
that's why for so long I'm like I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of friends. And then I have another person in my life who meets, random Joe Blow on the street and calls them their friend
Hmm.
when it's like they just had one conversation and they really hit it off, but that was it. And they're like, oh, yeah, my friend. When they talk about them, they say my friend. And so it's just interesting our different definitions of what friend is. And I feel like my definition has had to evolve because I put so much pressure and weight on it. And I think I was also looking at myself. I'm like, I'm such a great friend. Like, why don't people want to be friends with me? And I had, whoa, sorry, my pen's flying. But I had a moment. I think this was like a couple years ago in Truckee because I had finally met a friend in Truckee where I was like, oh, we're on the same page. Like,
One of
like,
us.
yeah, like I was
Oh,
like, it's
oh.
so hard to make friends here. And, she was just someone that we just totally hit it off. And, me being, whenever I get a couple drinks in me, I maybe go a little too hard and
Goes from a couple to like a couple more.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that maybe like during one of our interactions when we were hanging out, I have maybe gotten a little too
Just one
yeah, I maybe just was on the sauce a little too much. Or not on the sauce. Like
on the sauce.
okay,
Are you shooting
hold on.
testosterone?
Hold on. I'm trying to say this in a way without saying I'm getting drunk, but I'm just going to say I
Call it what
just
it
need to
is.
say it. Yeah. Okay, so we were hanging out in downtown Truckee, and I think I just had gotten a little too drunk, and we didn't hang out for a while after that. I had like hit her up a lot. And this may totally not be true. She might be listening to this podcast and be like, "Are you talking about me?" And I'm gonna be
Yes.
like, "Yes." But it was just the moment that I had realized that maybe it's not them of why I'm not making a lot of friends. Like maybe it's not other people. Maybe it is me.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm the reason I'm not making a lot of friends because of my behavior,
Yeah.
because of what I if I have no filter and I'm just saying whatever is on my mind, I'm saying it harshly and like or if I'm opinionated or like maybe it is me.
Hmm.
And I had to like I don't know, it was just a moment because I was like, man, I really like her. Like what the heck is going on? And I'm like, maybe she didn't like my behavior and that's not something that she wants in a friend.
I think that
Maybe
was a maturity point for you
it
to
was. It was a
be like, oh,
turning point for
oh
me.
shit. Did I get too fucked up and
Yeah.
ruin a friendship?
Yeah. No, truly. Like
Yeah.
that's how I felt and I mean we're still friends today, so I don't necessarily think that was like a turn. It was a turning point for me personally
Character
to
development.
realize that maybe it is me.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm in the wrong.
Hmm.
And I'm always looking to improve. I really like I do welcome feedback, and I also want to like make my friendships and my relationships stronger. And that was a turning point for me to realize like, okay, I need to change some of my behavior because I don't even like that.
Yeah.
And I want to be a good friend.
That boils back to like almost the beginning of this conversation a little bit too.
Yeah.
Of it's hard to make friends because when you see red flags in people
Yeah.
and you're like, did you not get that out of your system earlier on? What's going on with
Right.
you? Like, should I have to worry as a friend?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to come full circle back to that point and go, am I the problem?
Right.
Like,
Well, yeah, it's
it's a
I
legitimate question too.
yeah, because I think about friendships are very similar to being in a relationship with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You see all different sides of them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I accept you for you completely. And when I
Vice versa.
see when I see your worst sides, like I love you through it. When I see your best sides, I love you through it. And I think a lot of the times with friends, it's easier to cut somebody off and distance yourself when you don't accept all the sides of them. But I think that's what I look for in my friendships, kind of going back to what your question was. I look for friendships where, like, I completely accept them for who they are, even if I get annoyed with them,
Mm-hmm.
even if they get annoyed with me. And we have respect for each other, where it's like, no, we're not into the same activities. No, we have different mindsets, but we learn from each other
Mm-hmm.
because I don't necessarily believe that everything that I believe is like totally right. Like I'm definitely open to changing my mind on some things because I don't feel so like hard fast on it. And I think that's what I enjoy about the friendships that I've made in my adulthood is that become more meaningful because I'm willing to learn from them as people. They don't have to be very similar to me. I'm not looking to be surrounded by echo chambers.
Good.
Like, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean because I have friends who are for sure echo chambers. We have some of the same views.
Right.
Some of my closest friends, we hold radically different views.
Yeah.
And I keep those people in my circle for great reasons. One of those is because it challenges like the status quo for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I think is okay and normal, I need somebody else to say the complete opposite and me look at them sideways and be like, where'd you get that?
Right. Yeah.
Because it makes you consider your worldview and it makes you consider your perspective and you're like, oh shit, I might be wrong on something.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful. I do love surrounding myself with wild people.
Yeah.
I love the calm, the quiet, the fun, the nice chill hang.
Mm-hmm.
But especially when I'm trying to get into something like comedy, having meek and mild stories of a nice, pleasant night and playing board games does not do well on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Hanging out with some wild people, they might get arrested. They might start a fight. Like, I'm not seeking that out,
Yeah.
but having that kind of interaction is fun. It
Yeah.
makes for memories.
Yeah. You like the spice of life.
I need a little spice in my friendships, not
Yeah.
every single one, because I also look to different friends for different things.
Yeah.
I look for some friends to challenge my opinions. I look for other friends to have deep intellectual conversation.
Yeah.
I look for some friends just to party with because they know how to get down
Yeah.
and they also know how to get up.
Right.
So that's important.
Totally.
The wild people that I like in my life are ones that are also not afraid to make mistakes and take
Mm-hmm.
risks. And at this stage, that can be really scary. As an adult, as a person who's trying to formulate a future and plan,
Yeah.
the risk taking element does not usually come from somebody who is, doing the charted 9 to 5. I've got my retirement, I'm going to get married and have kids, and like that's going to be my life.
Yeah.
That level of risk taking is on the lower side.
Mm-hmm.
And the higher risk takers are also going to, bigger risks, bigger rewards, bigger failures,
Yeah.
but they make memories and they also really go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that I find very inspiring and encouraging because I'm usually more risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of gravitate towards those people because they excite me and they bring that element out.
Yeah. And that it's like, where are you wanting to grow? What are your goals in life? And those are the type of people that you want to start surrounding yourself with. I think for me, at one point in my life, I just wanted to be liked
Mm-hmm.
so badly. Like, and I didn't really look at what these people were doing with their life. I didn't really look at, do they have goals? Are they aligned with mine?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be liked by them. And I think when you're just striving to be liked by people, you tend to lean towards the more smothering
Mm-hmm.
aspect, which I definitely feel like I have that with some of my friendships. I'm trying to tone it back because I
Yeah.
don't want it. I just want them to know like I love them and like I'm here for them. But
And
I
that's
notice,
communicated other ways. It doesn't
yeah,
have
and
to
it
be like,
doesn't,
I love
yeah, it
you.
doesn't always have to
Yeah.
be the way that I've done it in the past. Again, I'm still learning. Like
Yeah.
I'm still learning in my own friendships. I'm 27 years old. I'm sure I'm going to continue to learn as I'm like 67 years old. So all I'm saying is that I now look at my friendships where it's like I want to learn from you, but I am also going to look at what are you doing? Like are you going to help me grow as a person as well? And that's probably like who I want to be spending most of my time with is people that want me to grow,
Mm-hmm.
encourage me to grow and inspire me to grow and vice versa. I want to do that for other people too.
Yeah. And I think that's where having like uncomfortable conversations with your friends too.
Yeah.
Of, sometimes that good hang is also going to be talking a little bit about shit that's, I don't know, more private.
Mhm.
Maybe it's something you're not comfortable talking about, like finances or
Mhm.
future trajectory or relationships. And you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I actually never go to you for this, but I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yeah.
And you can approach it in a way where it's not like, let me ask you about how much do you make?
Right.
That's People aren't always comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But being able to like talk about finances with your friends is weird because everybody's at these different levels and different stages.
Mhm.
And we all measure it differently too. Like some people value their free time or their travel so much more than like buying a house
Right.
or retirement. Some people, they only want to be married. They only want to have that kid. They don't really care about the career. Like that is their goal.
Mhm.
And then there's just so many different values across the board,
Yeah.
but you can ask people and find out like, how do you live? Like, what do you prioritize there?
Like what are your goals
Yeah.
in life? I don't think even us, like I don't think we really ask our friends and even, different relationships that we have, like what are your goals in life? Where
Yeah.
do you want to go?
I look at behavior more than I ask. I assume.
Yeah, but it's always, I mean, cuz then if you know somebody's goals, then if they want, you can help them keep accountable to that.
And they can
Like
also
I
probably
have,
give
I mean,
give advice too.
I have I have friends from the gym that are like, "Hey, why didn't you put out a podcast episode on Wednesday? It's been another week. You might lose a follower if you don't if you don't put out an episode." And I'm like, "Oh man, you're right. Like we got to stay consistent. We got to get back to it."
You have people in your life that keep you accountable when you tell them your goals and ask about theirs.
Yeah, like I like that aspect of my friendships as well. Another thing that really bonds me with my friends, like people that I love hanging out with, is when I can laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we have the same humor. Oh my gosh, I have the best time. Like when you can just belly laugh with someone
Mm-hmm.
and when they think like your failures are ridiculous shit and like you can just point them out and talk shit to each other. Those are the best friendships and best relationships, honestly,
Yeah, I
when
would
you're
say
that comfortable with somebody.
when you can't call somebody out on their bullshit, the relationship isn't that good in my mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is like men versus women. It's just what I've experienced because I don't have a lot of very strong adult female friendships.
Why
Like
is that? Why don't you have a lot of female friends? Have
I'll
you
be
not?
vulnerable and honest with you. From a respect to our relationship point, there are very finite boundaries for me that are very clear of like, I don't want this ever getting misperceived. And I have a flirtatious personality. So I worry about being
If
overly.
you're listening to this, I just made a face that was like, what are you talking about?
So like
I don't feel like you have a flirtatious
I think I'm a
personality.
flirtatious person. I think that I'm friendly. I think that
Wait.
I'm approachable. No, no, no. This is how I think I'm perceived.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
And I could be
Okay.
totally off. But I worry about, first of all, creating any kind of like, hey, what's going on with so and so? Like, I'm not comfortable with you having that kind of relationship with somebody. And I feel awkward about those types of relationships. So I actually put up a little bit of a boundary and I don't
Mm-hmm.
really engage very much with women at that level. And so because of that, it seems to limit my actual like depth of friendships with women.
Mm.
Now, if it's my friend's girlfriends or significant other or something like that, or she's a lesbian and I know that there's zero sexual chemistry or tension, there's no question about it for me. Like it's not an issue. I can be friends with those people. But if there is somebody that I'm like, I think that would bother you, then I'm going to
Because they're like an
intentionally,
attractive person.
yeah. Like if I know that you find them attractive, and there's some kind of like woo 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 anything like that,
Yeah.
I will intentionally avoid like furthering a relationship with that person as a friend. Even though
Interesting.
I would never cross that boundary,
Interesting.
it's because I don't even want to get close to the boundary because then it threatens what we have in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something I have to work through as an adult and a
Yeah.
man. Just, it's weird. It's not necessarily something I'm proud of, but
Well, no,
it's
I mean,
true.
it's not necessarily something to be shameful over at all.
Mhm.
I just appreciate you being vulnerable and honest about all that because I actually did not. We haven't really had that conversation.
Mhm.
What we have had conversations about is me having a lot of guy friends.
Mhm.
Like I, I've had, I think, generally more. Well, no, I wouldn't say more guy friends than I over the years from high school into college and even post. I developed more guy friend relationships than I did women relationships. And I think because I was so hurt in the past by female friendships and it was really hard for me to get over it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I also grew up with brothers. I think there's something to say about that when you grow up with a sister, versus grow up with brothers.
Mhm.
But I have generally, in the past, probably like 8 years of our relationship, had more guy friendships. And
Yeah.
it has not at all been a threat to our relationship.
No. Well, I think
Um,
part of it too is I have a strong foundational security in what we have,
yeah.
where I don't worry about infidelity or anything like that.
hmm
I don't perceive you as being overly flirtatious. I
See,
perceive you
but
as being nice.
out of the two of us,
Yeah.
I think my personality is way more flirtatious and outgoing than yours. So it's just interesting that you say that because I'm like, if anything, I think just me being overly friendly
Mm-hmm.
can have people think, and that's another thing with guy friendships and girl
Sexual
friendships.
attention.
Yeah, like, well, just attention in general. It's
Yeah.
like what I noticed is like even with some guy friendships that I've had in the past, it's like me just giving them attention. They thought that I liked them when
Yeah.
in my mind it's like completely platonic,
I
and I'm
think
like, what the heck is going on?
I think men have a hard time separating that
Yeah,
personally because I know that if I get too much attention from a woman that's not you, I assume it is flirtatious.
interesting.
Even
Yeah,
though it's not like you're so sexy or like let's go
yeah,
get out of here. Like that's not happening.
yeah,
But because I'm perceiving something that might be there, I will actually be less friendly
yeah.
and I will, like I said, put up that boundary. I'll be a little cold. I've definitely jumped the gun in certain social circumstances and been like, I have a girlfriend. And there's like,
Right.
and it's
And then it's awkward because they're like, "What are you
not
just?"
necessarily. Sometimes there is for sure perceived flirtation. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, thank you for telling me. Like, I appreciate that.
Oh.
So that has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had to
Usually with
say that before
strangers.
too, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I have a boyfriend. Okay, now I know you like me, so
And
I can't even pursue a friendship with you now.
well, I feel like you can if you know that there is nothing there. Like,
Yeah.
there are certain friendships that we have. Some of my closest friends had crushes on you when we first met.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was the new guy who popped in
Mm-hmm.
and kind of pissed them off a little bit. And that's part of the fun, I
Yeah.
think. But like, we're still friends, and there's no weird.
Totally. And there's like nothing at
Yeah,
all.
because
Yeah,
I
totally.
extinguished that flame. I came in here and said, "You have anything?" Nope.
Yeah.
But
No, that is interesting. I think also I just grew up
mhm,
um with a variety of girlfriends and guy friends
mhm,
and being in the same group as them. Like being surrounded by them daily. Like
mhm.
with theater, I was surrounded by girls and guys, different sexualities.
A
Like
lot of gay men.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
gay men. So I think from a young age, I just have, I've, even when I was in elementary school, I had guy friends,
Mhm.
and so I think, yeah, it's interesting. I just have I've been able to separate that for myself.
No, I definitely know when things are totally platonic. I've had a handful of friendships with women that are 1000%
hmm
completely platonic. There's no question about it. And even those friendships, once we've gotten together, have faded. Like I have ceased to interact really
Yeah.
and kind of moved away. And I don't know if that is like a subconscious, like, oh, Kenzie might not like if I'm chatting with this chick,
hmm
even though there's nothing going on there.
Yeah.
but there does seem to be this conscious distancing.
Well, I mean, I'm obviously very happy that you're respectful of that.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I think that this matters more because I would like to have a future with you for my life. I'm probably going to die first, so for my life. But no, that's where that comes from, and it's
yeah.
weird. It's something to work through. I don't think that I should be averse to women because I have a girlfriend. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it just, yeah, obviously, it just depends on a lot of different factors. Um,
Were you not expecting that?
no, I was not expecting that. That really caught me off guard. But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that.
Yeah. I have noticed you were talking about like your deep friends and like or deep connections with friends and belly laughing.
Hmm.
One of the things that I pick up on with men and friendships with men, and I want to know if it's similar with women, is the depth of your relationship equals comfort and respect, and that comes from shit talking. Like if
Hmm.
I can disparage another man's character and be playful about it, like
Jesus.
say horrendous things to him, I respect him and it's playful
Yeah.
because, and that is the key element is that it's playful. If it's
Right.
serious, that's not respect. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
But some of my closest friends, the greetings that we give each other are terrible. The way that we interact with each other is mean. Like we're not necessarily always like this, hey man, I love you, bro.
Hmm.
Like that love is shared by shitting on them.
Yeah.
And does that happen with women as much? Me being so distant from women, apparently. Um,
Yeah.
do you notice that at all?
Yeah. I think when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
I always took people making fun of me as really mean. And I wouldn't say that I was like bullied necessarily, but I definitely had like some mean girls in my group. And so I always took that as just a sign of disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really wanted to be like that with my friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Like it felt uncomfortable for me to do that because I'm like, I don't want them to think I don't like them or that I don't care about them. Like I don't want that to ruin a friendship because it ruined it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I don't think I should be the testament to girl friendships and talking shit
I gotcha.
because I think that I just had a different experience growing up. But I can say that the friends that I can call out with love and like you're saying, like shit talking, like, but you're doing it in a playful way.
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed that the girlfriends that I have that with, it's very fun.
Yeah.
And
You guys have a better time with
yeah,
each
you just have a better time. It's just not so serious.
other. Mm-hmm.
You know, which is another thing too of like how you come off. Because I was thinking about this
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
and I'm like, they're like the way that we're portraying ourselves is probably so serious.
I've come across as a corporate dildo many a
Yeah.
time.
Like just so serious and it's just like, man, like I don't know it, but we're also very serious. Like we laugh a lot.
We're so playful behind the scenes, usually in intimate moments,
Yeah.
like where we can make fun of each other and it's funny.
Yes.
But in other times, like we got to focus on our future.
I'm always thinking about the future. I'm always thinking about growing and that's a whole different thing.
I'm trying
But
to
I think
practice
with the
stoicism over here. Like,
yeah. I think with the podcast too, it's like people could look at us portraying ourselves as being like very serious people, but we're very silly people.
mhm.
And like we don't know a lot about shit. So it's like I
Oh no,
think
shit about fuck.
but I think that I've had this insecurity of like, well, I don't want to come off like I'm an expert
Hmm.
because I'm not. I'm not an expert really in any field. I just have my own experiences that I want to share with people.
Hmm.
And I'm also curious about other people's experiences, which comes with our guests. And so it's just interesting when we talk about topics and then I look back and I'm like, man,
So
so
serious,
serious all the time.
like so stern and
Yeah,
uncomfortable and rigid.
I know. And I don't like it. But anyway, that's just a thought that I had about portrayal and
There
all that.
was that makes a lot of sense. I think I want to touch back on that in just a second, but there was one last point I had about
Yeah, sorry, I completely
talking
interrupted.
shit and being inappropriate even. So
Yeah.
the talking shit element to your friends is fun,
Hmm.
but when you are exploring a new friendship, you're testing the boundaries and you don't know what's okay and what's not.
Yeah.
And what I find is that with men and building those new friendships, you're testing out the boundaries of what can I say that's not all right that you're okay with?
Hmm.
And you're building trust that way. Because if you say something and you cross that line, and then they turn around and they say like, "Oh, this person is bad."
Mm-hmm.
Like what comes to mind is racism. Like
Mm.
there's, and this sounds terrible as a white dude, but like growing up, my friends all different colors. Racism was not this pointed thing that was making fun of the difference of that person in a way that was disparaging.
Mm-hmm.
It was laughing at, this is kind of different, but we're friends and we're the same type of person. I think that if you were to do that with a complete stranger, that's totally inappropriate. And they would turn around and go, "Hey, that guy is racist as fuck. You don't want to be his friend."
Yeah.
And that's, I think that might be a bad example that makes me look terrible on the internet. So we can always dial that back. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you're testing these inappropriate boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing what you're okay with, and oh, we have similar humor. Or oh, you think that's funny. Well, let me say something else that you think is fucked up. And you build that level of trust with people.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I've experienced that with women as much. I mean, even with the guy friendships that I've recently made, that I definitely get a lot of like poking fun at me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learn to talk shit back because
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, it's just a guy thing.
it's a
But I
trust.
have had actually one of my recent friendships. Um, she definitely calls me out on stuff that she's like, what did you just say?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you totally just said this. And then like, and then it keeps me accountable, for what I'm saying. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I did say that, didn't I? That was a lie. you know?
Lie detector determined that was a lie.
Right.
Well, like, I guess I want to go back to my racism comment because
Okay.
there's a reason I'm saying it. So we were at your CrossFit Open yesterday,
Yeah.
and I interacted with somebody who I don't know very well at all. Black dude, nice guy, but he made a racist joke, and I don't know him well enough to have even laughed at it.
Mm.
I was uncomfortable. There was not any trust built in that scenario.
Yeah.
And I could tell just the way that we were interacting with each other after that. Because I was like, I don't know this guy well enough to be like, ha ha, that's hilarious. Because I don't want to look like an asshole. I just met him. Right.
Yeah, it's also a weird thing.
It was a weird comment to make,
Yeah, I mean,
personally,
like, why are you making racist jokes in the
in
like
the
what
gym.
in the gym and
Well,
just in general with someone that you don't know?
so I think he was trying to extend that, like, let's see where your boundaries are. Can we be friends? But it wasn't,
Yeah.
there was not enough, like, time put in. There wasn't enough, like, interaction
Yeah.
to just, let me just drop this little bomb on you. How did that go? And it's like, I'm uncomfortable. Let me scoot over here.
Yeah, I think we're always in a social experiment with people.
Totally. But that was an example of that where it's
Yeah.
somebody's testing the waters and I happen to not take that bait and
Yeah.
go, yeah, I don't know if I want to be part of that. Thank you though.
Mm-hmm.
And swim away.
Some
So
way.
I feel like a little fish swimming away from what could be eating me. I don't
Yeah.
know. You had talked a little bit about sharing your opinion and not being an expert and feeling comfortable to share your opinion.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So I guess moving into our
Yeah, I feel
last and
like we're on
final
60
topic.
minutes. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not very interesting in conversation sometimes with people because I don't feel as well researched about certain things.
Hmm.
And so when people are talking about politics or religion or um, maybe cultural shit, I don't really know. Just things that maybe I feel like I need to have more research on it. I don't really have, I don't feel comfortable to share my opinion.
Hmm.
Which I think is actually a disservice. Like I feel like I do need to start sharing more of my opinion and being okay with being wrong
Hmm.
because that's the only way that I'm going to learn about a subject. But I definitely have felt in social situations when I'm talking with people about certain subjects that I will either keep quiet.
And is that because you have a differing opinion or because you don't know much about the subject?
Yeah, maybe because I have a differing opinion, but I don't know about the subject enough
Hmm.
to share my opinion and
Like
feel
to back it up.
and feel comfortable. Like, because I'm not trying to debate them.
Right.
Like, I'm not trying to always be in a debate with people, and I'm not trying to always like question logic. Like, I think that's not very fun. Like,
It
like,
gets annoying
yeah,
unless it's like welcome.
Right,
There are
exactly.
moments that that's fine,
Totally.
but if
But
it's all
not
the
just
time,
like in normal conversation because then you just feel judged and you're like, well, I'm not like totally tied to my opinion. I don't want you to think that
hmm
my opinion is my identity. Like, I'm okay changing it. I just want to learn more. This is how I initially feel on it. Now let's have a conversation to change my mind. But I think I've been in a lot of social situations, and I think in just the past 8 years, honestly, like since like Trump got into office,
even
if you
before
share
that.
your, yeah, and even maybe a little bit before that, but I feel like when you share your opinion about something, it's like scrutinized on the internet,
hmm
and there's shadow banning, and like there's like, oh, this is sensitive content. And so, not to say that I'm completely, you know,
You're not radical.
I'm not radical in any way, but
I think
I
you're pretty
like to,
rad, but
I, but I like to question things.
yeah, that was a
And
bad joke. I'm sorry.
yeah, but I like to question things. So I don't know. I do feel like I've kept quiet about certain things, and that doesn't really make me an interesting conversationalist.
hmm
So I would like to change that. But
I find
how
you
do
to
you
be
feel?
I find you to be a very interesting conversationalist. It's part of why we're doing this. Um, so there's that.
Well, thank you for saying that.
But but I'm just kidding. Um, Sharing your opinion is important. I think that where we come from, there is this divide, West Coast versus East Coast, of how you socialize.
Mm-hmm.
And I have noticed that the people on the East Coast that I've interacted with, I tend to like more because I know where they stand. They're okay sharing their opinion. They're okay being disagreeable.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay because it's not their identity. It's like, hey, I have this belief. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, I didn't realize that. But because I know where somebody stands, it's far easier for me to like them, even if I disagree with them. It's the people who are too agreeable, who are wishy washy, or maybe they just don't really share.
Yeah.
I don't have a high level of trust with those people
Mm.
because I wonder. It's like, where do you stand on these things?
Right.
And I've caught myself for sure biting my tongue, not sharing my opinions, using discernment too. There are moments where you're like, okay, should you pipe up during a corporate work meeting?
Yeah.
Probably not. I had some of those opinions on Friday and I shut the fuck up about it
Yeah.
because that is,
Yeah, you have to use discernment,
you
I
have to
think, in
discern.
certain social situations.
Yeah.
But I think the friendships and relationships where you can feel like you're in a safe room and have conversation about around the subject, I think that's fun. And I feel like we've kind of lost that.
I think, especially with people getting more and more sensitive towards subjects that we were able to talk about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
that's been this big shift that I think is actually disconnecting people with what used to unite people. It
Mhm.
used to be like, hey, I don't like this about blank, and this person's totally in support of it, and they could sit down next to each other at a coffee shop and just talk about it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't like result into yelling or posting it online and suddenly somebody's losing their job. Like it was literally like, oh, you think that abortion is bad and this person is pro life. Like let's or whatever the opposite is. I just fucked up my words there, right? Yeah.
But you
Pro,
think
you
abortion
think
is
abortion
bad.
is bad and this person is pro life.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's the same argument in
Yeah.
many ways. But people used to be able to sit down comfortably and talk about those things and maybe they could disagree but it wouldn't reflect on their character.
Right.
It wasn't their identity. And you also find out when you talk to people about their opinions on certain matters, it's very easy to lump somebody into one camp. Like if you support building the border wall, they immediately think that you are a right sided Republican leaning. You probably love guns. You're probably anti drugs. You're probably leaning more towards religion. And there's all of these values that come with like you just expressed one opinion. You didn't
Right.
share any of your other opinions on those things, but they assume you fit this profile.
Yeah, because I think people, again, when you attach your opinion to your identity,
hmm
it's much harder for you to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah.
I was listening to this podcast with Adam Grant on Diary of a CEO. It was an amazing podcast episode. I took notes thoroughly. I felt like I was in class.
hmm
It was it was really amazing. He's a psychologist on business organization. Um, and he was the whole point of the episode, I think, was bringing more positive emotions around like just working
hmm
in your 9 to 5 or whatever it is, like how to motivate people. But he had talked about this idea of self promotion versus idea promotion.
Okay.
And self-promotion is very much like, look at me, look at
Look at
my,
what I did.
yeah, look at what I did, look at my awards. And a lot of people can get really turned off by that because it comes off as like narcissistic behavior.
It's kind of like jerking off in front of people.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
then
really like that.
yeah, and then idea promotion is like I have something worth sharing
Hmm.
and I want to like elevate someone's thinking around this topic. And it's almost like that's being looked at as a service to people. Like, oh, thank you for like sharing your wisdom on that and like
You've connected
you
somebody to an idea.
yes, and you're almost like bettering themselves or that person.
Hmm.
Um I may be speaking like very all over the place about the subject, but anyway, um and so he was talking about how when you attach your opinions to yourself, it just becomes much harder for you to admit when you're wrong. And because he's like, I'm someone that really values curiosity, I'm someone that values like learning from people.
Hmm.
And he's like, I've been told that I'm a logic bully because somebody will have an idea that they're sharing with me and they think that they're talking logic on it. And he's like, I'm poking all these holes in it because I want to reach the ideal truth. I want to know what the truth is.
I'm
And so
guilty of that for sure.
yeah, he's like always getting into arguments with people. He's always like debating and like that's just not fun. You
No,
know, like
that's annoying as fuck.
yeah, it's annoying. Like no one wants to feel like they're being challenged all the time. Like it's not a fun place to be in on the other side.
There's a balance to that for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
definitely. Like I think you can come from a place of like, no, I actually want to learn like why you think this way and I want to share why I think this way. And then maybe you guys can come up to like
You can meet in the middle
you can
somewhere.
meet in the middle like where there maybe is that ideal truth.
Hmm.
But I think when, you come off as like a logic bully and you're just trying to debate someone for the sake of debating, and poking holes in all of their ideas, it can just become annoying. So anyway, he said, um, I don't necessarily want to have a personal brand because then that kind of puts me into this box. When people say like, oh, what you said was very on brand. What you're wearing, very on brand for you. Because they're putting you into this character.
Hmm.
And like we talked about before, like how you're portraying yourself versus how you feel inside. I think people can have this idea of you. And he said, like, when you step out of that character, when you step out of that box, it becomes, people almost don't even know how to interact with you. Um,
Mm.
and it's like they feel uncomfortable. They feel like they don't know you. And it's much harder then you almost like feel this pressure that you can't think another way. You have to think this way. You're right.
It destabilizes somebody's idea of you, and
Yeah.
that it's off brand, then maybe they stray away. They're turned off by that.
Yeah, maybe they're turned off by that because, they think of you as this like, certain person. And so what he was saying, he's like, I want to be known for my reputation. I want to be known for a set of values. He's like, I want to be able to question myself, my thoughts, my beliefs. And he's like, if you don't contradict yourself, you are failing to learn, which I just thought was a really interesting take because it's like, I think a lot of people are just afraid to be wrong.
Yeah.
They're afraid to admit when they're wrong. And it's their ego gets in the way, their pride gets in the way. Um, and, I don't want to be that way. And I know that, I'm not a perfect human being. I know that my own ego and pride will definitely get in the way of probably certain conversations. And then I can take a step back and be like, okay, I didn't mean to come off that way. Like, I'm ready to have the conversation now, looking at it through the lens of wanting to learn.
That is a very like adult and healthy way to approach those types of conversations.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people should take a page out of that. And it's from Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Diary of a CEO podcast with Adam Grant. It was so interesting. I really learned a lot from it. And I also really love that podcast.
Hmm.
So I think people literally, it feels like school. It feels like school every time I listen to an episode. I'm like always taking notes.
It's one of my favorite things you've turned me on to in this
Yeah.
relationship because I get to learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
I love podcasts. I love listening to other people's opinions and information. So when it brings new things to the table like that, I'm super thankful.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of want to close out on like perceptions of who we think we are. Like behind the scenes, you have this own perception of you, and other people see you, they see me, and they have these assumptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think of myself as from the outside, I look very conservative. I look like a gym bro. I look like I don't read. I look I have certain looks and attitudes that are kind of apparent,
Mm-hmm.
and people can make a lot of assumptions. But I think I'm actually more liberal than people realize. I just love like my personal agency and people not telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I love philosophy and digging deep into things almost to the point where it's annoying. I love to read, I love to write, I love to think. And I am an artist. I feel like I'm an undercover artist. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to be seen as like this hippie woo woo type guy, but I am a creative and I don't always put that out there.
Yeah.
So I am now. That's who I perceive myself to be, and too often I come off as corporate dildo because I'm trying to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think as you get older, you start stepping into who you want to be.
Hmm.
You start portraying, okay, well, this is actually who I want to be. For a really long time, I feel like I've just let other people's opinion dictate my own decisions, dictate who I am. Like, I'm like, oh, they must think this of me, so that's probably who I am. Like, for a while, I was called helpless human.
Mm.
And from certain family members, and that really hurt me for a while because I didn't think I was necessarily like capable of doing more and being more, and I had to get over that because it's like obviously it's a joke, like obviously I don't need to attach that to my personal identity. I would just have behaviors that probably looked lazy from the outside, but it's
Hmm.
like again
Especially
at
by
the
very
time
driven
like they
people.
didn't know really like what my day-to-day looked like. They weren't living with me, like they didn't know.
Yeah.
It's just certain behaviors that you portray to certain people
You might
at
have also
phases
been
of life.
hungover and
Yeah, whatever.
laying low.
Yeah, so anyway, I've had to get over that. But now I feel like people probably see me. I mean, I don't know because just the other day when I had talked about that girl saying she's like, "Oh, you're very opinionated, very hippy dippy," and I'm like, "Am I that?" Like, I'm like, I don't know, but how I feel, I can just say how I feel.
Hmm.
Is I love people. Like people energize me.
Hmm.
Like when I am around people and I'm in like great conversation, I'm laughing, like it literally gives me the energy. I'm a total extrovert at heart. I'm also very creative.
Hmm.
I feel like I have always been that way, but for a while I never thought that I could be that, and so I never tapped into that side of myself. But when I was younger in theater, like I was surrounded by creativity, and I really think that made me the person that I am today. Um, and now it's like I'm just tapping into that creativity and seeing what it looks like, as 27-year-old Kenzie. So yeah, I definitely think I'm a creative at heart. Um, I definitely love taking care of myself mentally and physically, and I'm always on the pursuit of what that is going to look like for me, like health-wise. I'm just always on the pursuit of that and just finding balance.
Hmm.
Um, I really do love learning about people. Like I'm a very curious person. I do feel like I ask a lot of more personal questions than surface level questions. I get really awkward when I have to do surface level stuff.
Sometimes you kind of like hold people hostage almost like you're going to tell me all about you.
Yeah, I know, which I really shouldn't
It's
do
great
that all
with
the
some
time. I mean,
people and
but
not
that's
with
just like who I
others.
am. Honestly, that is just who I am.
It's great for podcasting.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great for podcasting. I'm like, you are held hostage here. But but I think I don't know. I'm still learning a lot about myself, but okay, I wanted to end with this because I thought it was like a good visual representation.
Hmm.
The night at the Roxbury,
Yeah.
and at the very end when the outside is the inside and
Yeah.
the inside is the outside.
Yeah.
I feel like when you've reached kind of like who you are, who you are, that's what happens at the night at the Roxbury Club is your outside becomes your inside and your inside becomes your outside.
I like that. That is a great way to finish it. Kind of want to watch Night at the Roxbury
I
tonight.
know. I love that movie.
Okay, well, let's call it.
Okay. Bye, everybody.